Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Healing Conversations. I am your host, Jabu. This is a place where healing meets hope and transformation. And each week we will dive into honest conversations about personal growth, trauma recovery, and becoming who we were always meant to be. So, whether you're healing from heartbreak, rebuilding your confidence, or just craving peace, you're not alone. If you're ready to feel seen, supported, and inspired, this space is for you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this podcast where me and Aunty Chesya are having a little chat. So I'll allow her to go ahead and introduce herself briefly. Yeah.
Hello. My name is Chesya, and I'm pleased to be here with Jabu.
Okay. I am happy to have you here with me. um, So, we'll be sharing a bit of our stories and how we found ourselves here. And the reason basically is just to speak to that person who feels like they're stuck or like their circumstances can't change due to either past trauma or abuse, relational abuse, things like that. Whatever reason you feel stuck, we're here to speak to you and say that it's possible to get unstuck. Yeah, so I will briefly share my story, Aunty Chesya. Um, yeah, so I was abused at 9 by my uncle. Then didn't get any help for that for many, many years. Ended up in a sexually and physically abusive relationship where I ended up having my beautiful firstborn daughter. After that, I went down a spiral because I still hadn't recovered from all this. I went down a spiral of about, I think, close to 10 years, maybe just a little under 10 years. But yeah, and during that period, there was just so much craziness going on. Didn't recover from that and ended up in an emotionally and financially abusive marriage. So now after I got into the marriage, I think second year of my marriage, I just got tired of always being in a place where I felt unloved, unwanted, valueless. I really, really got tired. And I was saying to my father, God, is this how I'm going to live the rest of my life? I can't continue down this spiral for the rest of my life. What can I do? And it's at that point that God so graciously helped me to see certain things that I had neglected in my life. So at this point, I'll break off and allow you to share a bit of your story as well.
Thank you, Jabu. First of all, before I go into sharing my story, I like the way you said unstuck. Because what I would say for myself, I felt stuck for many years until I became unstuck.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll talk a little more about the situations or the moments that helped us to become unstuck. But for myself, I came from a family that I would consider, fairly stable. My father was a wonderful man, a loving man. He loved my mother very much, and he showed this in the way that he taught us to respect her. Unfortunately, he died when we were still quite young, and my mother brought us up. So I think there was a sense of insecurity growing up as well, where you're so dependent on this parent, and if they're a little late from work or they're a little late from the market, you're panicking. You're panicking all the time, thinking, what has happened to this parent? But it was you know, she did her very best to bring us up. She did, you know, extra little things. Even though she had a job, like she would be selling, you know, scones at work and to friends, just for that extra income. And we had a fairly untroubled teenage growing up. So when I went to university, you know, I would say it was from a sheltered family, very sheltered. So you go into university and you find that, you know, some of your friends are quite exposed, and you become exposed to meeting people of the opposite sex, one of brothers and, you know, family members. So that was a different stage of my life. But I cruised through university, and then in the last year of university, I met somebody and I thought, this is it. And we got married a year after courtship. Yeah, for me this was it. This was the person I wanted to spend my life with. You know, he ticked off the boxes that I had at that time. You know, at that time you're just fresh out of university and you're thinking, I think it was a lot of reading from the Mills and Boone and those kind of things. So it was like tall, dark and handsome and doing this and that. So yeah, he ticked off those boxes at that time. And I went into marriage, and it seemed like this is it. But after a while, it became something very, very different from what I'd envisaged. And the worst part, I think, was the abuse. You know, there was a lot of abuse. There was emotional abuse, and it then ended up becoming physical abuse. And when you mentioned the word stuck, I became stuck. You know, I saw no way out. You know, and it was such a contrast from the way I'd imagined that marriage would be, because I'd seen my parents, I'd seen my aunts and uncles, and then to be in this relationship with a person that I thought was going to be the be-it-all and end-all. So that was such a huge contrast. And so I became stuck, incapable of doing anything. I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to confront the situation that I was in.
Yeah. So if you can relate thus far, please keep watching. We do have some good news after being stuck. So I'll go ahead and share how I started getting unstuck. Yeah, so like I shared initially, I just cried out to God and said, I'm tired. I'm really tired. So that's one. For me, I got tired of the status quo. Because remember, for me, it had started even before the marriage. You know, I had been in these relationships, and it was just like, it's like the same person, well, the same situation, just with a different face. You know, and I just really got tired. Like, God, is this all there is to my life? You know, and the thing is, I could have decided to walk away from love, but I love love.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Well, there's some who just, but I love love, you know. So I really had and still do have this burning desire to actually experience the real thing. And so I cried out to God, like, I know this is not the real thing. Please just show me, what do I need to do? So that's the first thing. I got tired. And slowly, painfully, but very faithfully, God began to show me the steps that I needed to take. And another huge step that I had to take was get to know me, rediscover myself. I had gotten completely lost. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know. Well, let me rephrase that. I knew because I'm a bit of a strong character, so I did know what things I like, what things I don't like, but I had allowed others to dictate to me that this wasn't okay. You being like this isn't okay, you know. So I had allowed others to tell me that I'm too much, or I'm not enough, or you know, all these things. So I had to rediscover myself, and then for me, really get to love who God created me. Quirks and all, flaws and all. And I'm sure you can attest, Auntie, that accepting your bad side, your flaws, is not always the easiest of things. You know, it's hard work, but I think that's the one thing that helps us really dial down into our humanity. That we are human, and that we're not perfect. And then we're able to relate with others at that level as well. Yeah, so I had to really just get to love myself. And some of the resources that I used are the book by Henry Cloud, Changes That Heal. That is a very, very good resource that I would highly recommend to anyone who's feeling stuck. It helped me realize that being me is not a mistake, including my quirks. God deliberately made me that way. You know, the Bible says, before He formed you, He knew you. You know, He deliberately made us the way we are, and we need to get to a place where we fully love and accept ourselves. And I keep on emphasizing quirks and all. You know, flaws and all. That's the only way we will ever truly embrace ourselves, because we can't run away from the negative side of who we are. Excuse me. Yeah, so that was the second thing I did. Another thing that I did, and for all these things, I'm sure, Auntie, you can attest, life is a cycle of learning, unlearning, and relearning. You know, as you go along, you learn something, you unlearn the old thing, but you have to keep on relearning as you keep doing life, because sometimes we forget, and you know, yeah. So another thing that I had to do, and I keep doing, is setting boundaries around who I discovered I am, to protect me, not to, you know, not to necessarily say I don't want people in my life, you know, but it's about protecting who I know God has made me to be. So, and being very, what's the word? Not shying away from being strong about your boundaries. I'll give an example. Let's say I, and this is something that I think is general, I prefer being spoken to respectfully. If I sense disrespect from someone, I will respectfully ask to be spoken to respectfully, right? But if the person keeps on insisting on speaking to me disrespectfully, then I have to set that boundary or reinforce that boundary and say, because you don't want to speak to me respectfully, then maybe we need to keep a distance, you know, and not being shy about doing things like that, because there's sometimes when we sort of shy away from doing these things. No, what will they think about me? I want to be nice. But I have discovered that in being nice, most of the time you hurt yourself. And you're taken advantage of. Yes, we have to be kind to one another, but sometimes niceness breaks our boundaries and ends up hurting us, you know. Yeah, so anything from you, Auntie, in terms of now the steps you took after realizing that you were stuck?
Yeah, I think I resonate a lot with what you've said, Jabu, and it's very interesting because when I look at the age difference, so this relational abuse, it cut across age gap, you know, social strata, economic strata, whatever, you know, it's something that is there that we have to deal with as a community, as families, you know, as in the church, the nation, you know. So, yeah, I see a lot of similarities, you know. You know, I just resonate with a lot of what you're saying. For me, I think I felt so devalued in my relationship. I could say I lost myself. I lost Chesya, the person that was created to be Chesya. I lost myself completely. You know, I couldn't have conversations with people without fearing what do they think about me. You know, you spoke about wanting to be liked. I really wanted to be liked by everybody, family, friends, whoever I came across with. And that meant very often I put myself in a situation of being abused by people who recognize this weakness in a person who wants to be liked. And so, you know, it went on for quite a while, and as I said, lost myself. But I think for me, the moment of realization, maybe there were several, but one was when a friend confronted me, you know, because many times when you're in such a situation, you develop crutches, you know, convenient people or convenient things that you lean on to sort of like, you know, hide your pain, to overcome the pain. And for me, I had these listening ears. I had family members, certain family members, and I had certain friends. And a particular friend said to me, like, oh, she'd had enough. She didn't want to hear from me again unless I was doing something about that, you know, situation. And of course, that caused me pain because I thought she's always been there for me. She knows what I go through. And she's helped me. How dare she even speak to me like this? But, you know, when I got home, I realized that she had a point. She was tired. Because when you're speaking negativity about a person who's close to you, they also, you project that negativity and they feel negative, they have negative feelings about that person you're talking about. And so that sort of set me thinking. And then the second thing for me was what you said. I realized that I had value outside of the marriage, outside of the spouse, outside even of my children or family, that I have value as a human being. And I need to say, where's my value? There are things that I can contribute to the world or my community or to my family or workplace, whatever arena it is, as Chesya. You know, and not necessarily attached to, you know, an individual or a family or whatever. So that, it began, you know, just kind of ringing in me that, no, I have value. And it doesn't have to be, you know, attached to this person or to this institution. That each one of us as a human being has value. We have something to contribute. And just being an individual, there's value in you. There's something that each one of us that is special. We don't just come to this world to be there, but there's something that each one of us has that is meant to contribute to the well-being of mankind.
Which is very uniquely us.
very uniquely Jabu, very uniquely
Yes.
Chesya, very uniquely whoever,
Yes.
is listening
Yeah.
to this podcast. And so, yeah, I would say
just to add on to that point, something I heard said about that was that if you don't allow yourself to do what you're just saying, realize that I have value and as me, as my uniqueness to the world, you are actually robbing the world. You're actually robbing the world because there's something that only you can contribute, which is needed in your family, in your community, with your network of people, that only you can contribute. So if you're not contributing it, you're actually robbing those around you of you. I thought that was powerful.
I like that.
Yeah, I thought that was powerful.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Sorry, I cut you. Please
No,
continue.
you didn't. I mean, I was just also thinking that in my line of work, I used to deal with people who were in situations of abuse, whether within the domestic arena or institutional arena. And it became apparent to me that my life was a lie. Because I was dealing with people in abusive situations, and yet I couldn't deal with, I was failing, I was stuck, and couldn't deal with the abuse in my own life. Until I came to that point, that fork in the road, and said, okay, do I continue like this, living a life that is phony, or do I do something about it? So, yeah.
Oh, that cuts deep because I too came to a place like that. In my line of work as well, you're helping people and you see them get to a better place because of the actions that they've taken with your help. And yet you are still in this, situation. I remember having to deal with that as well. And initially, I don't know, for some strange reason, I don't know if anyone can relate to this, for some strange reason, I took it back to God and I'm like, it's your fault. How come I can help others but you're not helping me? Kind of thing, blaming it on Him. But I had to come to the place where I say, no. These people you're talking to they're doing the work that needs to be done to get out of that space. You are not. You know it, but you're not doing it. So it's one thing to know stuff, and but it's a totally different thing to take action.
Absolutely.
The Bible says we nullify God's power when we don't do what His word says. So I was nullifying God's power in my life by not doing, so that totally resonates. Totally. It was a painful place because it's not nice when you realize that your life is the way it is because of yourself.
Yeah, but many of our lives are exactly because of ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the actions that we take, like you, I came to that realization, yes, you have value, but if you don't take action, and I had to take action to become unstuck. So being unstuck for me was a process. First, the friend who speaks very candidly, because many times in families, sometimes people don't speak candidly. And friendships, they don't speak candidly.
No,
they'll continue to butter you along, just sort of like, okay, no.
But kumbari, they're talking.
Kumbari, they're talking. And so it's just the candid friend, the friend who decided to be upfront, hurtful as the words seemed to be at that point. and then the finding value in myself. But one of the third and most important was taking action. Because that could have happened, but still remain in a situation because it seemed to be an institution of security, which marriage should be.
Yeah.
You know, security for both partners.
Yeah.
But taking action is very, very important. Otherwise, I could still be stuck.
Okay. Any other nugget that you would like to share on or to someone who they're in this situation, whether in a marriage or in a relationship or just in a family, and or even, you know, at work, and they feel like they don't have the power to do anything about it. What would you say to such a one? One who feels like they don't have the power to do anything about their circumstance.
I would say, I think different people react to different things. You know, there's always that moment where you say, okay, this has hit me. But what I would say to any person going through a situation where they feel stuck is that there's help. There's help out there. It's just that many times we're cocooned and we don't look for the help. Because when I look at maybe in the marriage, arena, you know, when you're getting married, there's a lot of like, keep the secrets of your marriage. And I think that's it's valuable advice because you don't want to be on a platform talking about the things you're discovering about your spouse which you don't like, and or the things that are happening. You don't want to be on a platform shouting about these things. But where there's something that is not right, abuse or things that are not right in that arena, there's help. There's help. There's help out there. You know, it could be therapy. It could be just even going to, you know, if it's physical, going to the police. There's the victim support unit. Going to the hospital. There are people that have had physical abuse and they don't seek medical help. You know, and you get stories of, you know, bleeding, and this is how we've lost many people, you know, cracked ribs and that kind of thing. There is help. You know, even speaking about it with somebody relieves the pressure and you'll get advice. Maybe we'll talk more about the places that a person could go to. But I think the first thing that anybody needs to realize is that there's help out there.
Definitely. There is help. There is definitely help. And just to emphasize what Auntie said again, you have to take action. You know, in as much as there's help everywhere, if you don't take action, you yourself, nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen.
Your family might be tired of your situation. Your friends might be tired of your situation. Your children might be tired of your situation. I remember someone sharing just the other day how their child came to them and said, "Mommy, please, enough. Your children might be tired of your situation, but if you yourself are not tired and take action, things will remain the same, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So, just to add on to what Auntie said, there's help and you need to take action. So, just to clarify what we mean by abuse. I was thinking, Aunty Chesya, maybe we could just give a bit more detail of the context of abuse. Yeah. So I will go first, and I will share that. For me, so it started with the sexual abuse. I was sexually molested by my uncle when I was 9 years old. And then I went on, when I was about 22, somewhere there, I got into a relationship with a young man who also sexually abused me. He would force himself on me sexually. We were not married or anything, but he would force himself on me. And he would physically beat me, you know. If I refused to have sex with him, he would hit me, even as we were walking in the roads and things like that. So that's sort of the context. And then later on, after that relationship, I was still I grew up very sheltered. I think Aunty Chesya shared a bit about that. I grew up very sheltered. So I remember how my mom would always say, Jabo, you're so gullible. Because I was very trusting, you know. And so even with my relationships with men, there was a place where I would trust them too much. And I would end up in situations where the man ends up taking advantage of me sexually. Looking back, I could have done better. But, so those are the sort of like the context. That's the context of when I talk about sexual abuse and physical abuse. Then I ended up in an emotionally abusive marriage and financially abusive. Now that's another context. This particular type of abuse entails emotional neglect. You know, where you have a partner, but they are not present, you know, and you feel like you are always alone. And I'll give a bit more detail, maybe examples. You are at home, but you never chat. You never laugh together.
The silent treatment.
The silent treatment, which is continuous and very deliberate. You know, there's situations in relationships, obviously, where you fight. That's normal, you know. But where this is consistent over months and years, now that's emotional neglect. You have situations where there's no involvement with what's going on with the family. You know, when you ask, what are we going to do? And I don't know. Every time I don't know, you know, and you have to find solutions to whatever is going on in the home. Yeah, so that's a sort of like a very brief description of emotional neglect. So that's the context when we talk about abuse, relational abuse. There's sexual, emotional, physical, and financial. Oh yeah, then there's a financial. I haven't given context to that one. Financial is the obligations that are supposed to be met are not being met. And it's not that it's just, you know, life happening, but it's more of, there's no effort even being made to meet those obligations. There's just no effort. It's just like, I don't know, you know, kind of thing.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. Aunty Chesya, some context. Yeah.
Okay, for me, I would say it was more emotional and then degenerated into physical.
Yeah.
You know, when I say emotional, again, the silent treatment, you know, where somebody just chooses not to speak to you because you've had, I don't want to use the word fight, because where actual physical fighting took place. You know, I heard somebody say intense fellowship on it. Intense fellowship. You have intense fellowship, and then you don't sit down to resolve the issue, so there's silent treatment, just trying to speak to somebody and they're not speaking back to you. They come back home late, they don't explain where they've been. And then insults, you know, put downs. You're a this, you're a that. And mind you, because words are very powerful, you begin to believe those things. Somebody tells you you're foolish or you're stupid. And you know within yourself that you're not those things. But because they're said so often, you know, you fall into that.
And by someone so close.
By somebody so close who is supposed to love you, you know. And for those that are Christians, I argue that how can you submit to somebody who doesn't show love to you, who doesn't, you know, it's very difficult to respect a person who doesn't show love to you. And so you're getting the silent treatment, it's degenerating into insults, into put downs, and then slowly escalating into slaps, you know, strangulation, and then kicks, and then just outright physical mistreatment, you know. You know, I've been to hospitals, you know. It's not even a laughing matter. I've been to hospital because you've been beaten so badly, and the doctor's telling you you've got a cracked rib. You know, so many things. But that's how far, you know, it went. And for me, the saddest thing, and why I keep saying is like you can do something about it, and it's important to do something about it, is that you can remain in such a situation of being so stuck. It's like there's no solution. And many people have died. Men and women.
Yes.
Men and women. Because they just didn't take action. And so I'm glad I took action. It was after a long time, but I'm glad I took action because...
After how long?
Oh my goodness, I don't even want to go there. But this was I was there for 20 years. 20 years. It wasn't 20 years of abuse, but it escalated. Yes, and by the time I was getting to that point, it was like nothing. I mean, first of all, it was like nothing will ever change for me. I'm stuck in this situation. But as I slowly began to come out of that cocoon, I took action. I shouldn't have stayed there that long. And many times when I came out of it, there were moments of such deep regret. But I look back and I say, I'm still here. And I can speak about it and I can encourage somebody.
Amen.
You know? Amen. So I'm grateful.
Can I just touch on that deep regret? Deep regret for what exactly, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, many things. I think deep regret that I stayed that long. Deep regret that I allowed myself to be in such a situation for that length of time. Deep regret that there were many years where my life was just fake. Because I was living a lie. I was living a lie. You know, I was working in organizations and institutions where we dealt with, you know, abuse, violence. So the information was there. But it was just the inner ability, you know. So even regret that I was unable to come out, I was unable to emerge. And I think that's something that we should talk about, how, you know, you become so abused. It's like there's a lid.
It becomes comfortable.
I don't know whether I would say comfortable for me. It was definitely not comfortable, but you become, you know, there's a term that they use, Stockholm syndrome. I don't know. We should talk more about that another point, where you become like you are touched, and you are incapable of moving out of this situation. You're just incapable. It's painful. It's difficult. You know, it's uncomfortable, but you feel unable.
I hear you. I totally hear you, and I totally, I guess it's just the right words, the right term to sort of express it. But it's sort of like, and this is very, putting it very loosely, because it doesn't even come near expressing, you know, what we're trying to say, but maybe sort of like that saying that it's better the devil you know than the angel you don't know, something like that, you know, like you're stuck in this place where you feel like this is what I know, I don't know what's out there. You know,
I don't know what's out there.
yeah,
I'm afraid of what's out there. Will it be worse than where I am right now?
Will it be worse?
And I think there's a very real perspective about marriage, which is which is we're not looking at marriage properly. The way that it was,
the way, you know, God says to look at it.
Thank you. You know, it's like you're in this institution and you must be there. Without looking at if both of you...
Can we touch on that a bit more, Auntie, please?
We need to talk about it a little more.
Because, honestly, that was a huge part. I didn't stay long. I didn't stay long. But that's only because, like I said, I love love. And I've always fantasized about, you know, my happily ever after. And within the first year, I could tell that this is not my happily ever after, you know. And so I still had a bit of fight in me, and I said, I can't continue like this. I went up to year 5 and I said no, because in year 5 I turned 40, and I thought to myself, really, you're turning 40, so 40 years of your life have been miserable in the love front. And then you want to stay here and the rest of your life should continue to be miserable. That was like a turning point for me. But I had such a, what's the word, fight back from everywhere about walking away from marriage. Especially that for me, we met at Bible school. So it's like, you're both Christians, you've been at Bible school, you know, what do you want? But the marriage wasn't being done God's way. Just because we're both professing to be Christians doesn't mean that we're doing marriage the way God says to do it. And unfortunately, because God created it, if it's not done the way He said to do it, it will be a mess. You know, someone will suffer, if not both. Yeah, so this whole thing of how society looks at marriage and pressures people to stay in a place that's so unhealthy for them. It's just, yeah, it's totally messed up. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a whole nother topic because we have to look at culture. We have to look at what marriage is and how the world has, defined marriage or is defining marriage, and how it can impinge on one's even mental health.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
So I think that's a whole other topic that we could speak about. But yes, just the fear of getting out of this institution of marriage because of what the community, the family, the church say, that you should be there. So yeah. But here we are, and we can talk about it.
Yes.
I think even that is a victory in itself, because many people, many men and women are not able to speak about their pain. They don't have the platform, and they don't have the, what would I call it? Just the opportunity. They don't have the opportunity.
Or even the right ears to hear
The
them.
right ears. Because, several times I spoke to people because I was crying out. I was crying out to be heard. I was crying out for a solution. And many ears were not the right ears.
Yeah, same here. We can attest to that as well. Yeah. Many ears were... so for me, since it wasn't physically abusive, they would quickly run to, but is he cheating? Is he beating you? So then why do you want to leave?
No, but in my situation, those things were happening.
But still. So it's like society is just, it's closed off.
Yes.
But thankfully, the narrative seems to be changing, albeit very slowly, but there's some change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we're grateful to that. And we're here to continue helping with that narrative change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, again, if you find yourself in a situation where you are in a relationally abusive circumstance, you can get unstuck. We have both lived through our fair share, and we're here now. Aunty Chesya and myself, age gap, but the end of the story is the same because we took action, and you can do the same. Yeah, so any last words?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
No, really, just to say, I echo what Jabu has said. You need to take action. You need whatever that action may entail. But the point is that when you take action, you should feel empowered enough and know that you have value. As a woman, as a man, as a human being, you have value. And no one has the right, to mistreat you.
Awesome. Thank you, Auntie.
Thank you, Jabu.
And thank you so much for sharing a story. We don't take it for granted. Thank you. Someone is blessed and encouraged. I know I am. Very deeply. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a pleasure just speaking with you, and it brings back many memories. But I think it's also therapeutic to go over and just speak about it, so that if there's someone out there, they don't have to go through what I went through or what you went through.
And that's why we speak.
And that's why we speak.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jabu.
Thank you, Auntie. Thank you for being here. I'm so humbled to share this space with you. If today's episode moved you, please share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment of healing. Until next time, Let's keep growing together, one brave step at a time.